you knew going in, Embiid gets calls. Embiid takes a ton of free throws. I believe it was 12 a game. In this game, he ends up shooting 13, so a little above his average. But from the getting Sabonis into foul trouble. Keegan picking up 2 quick fouls. Then they go, Neemias Queta, I know you just got off the plane from Stockton. You're in Philly now. You're getting in the game, which kind of surprised me a little bit that he got in that fast. And then he picked up 3 fouls in like 2 minutes. And some of the fouls, no doubt about it, questionable. I'm not denying that. I thought the officiating wasn't great. But the reality is they did not fight through it at all. And I feel like for a team that handled adversity so well in the beginning of the season after that 0-4 start, and even some of the games they played, it was like, all right, we got hit, but we're hitting back. I feel like tonight they got hit early and they just never recovered. It was like they were just trying to throw knockout punches instead of just play your game. Just go out there and execute what you guys do well, and that's run your offense, get into your stuff. Obviously, it hurts when you're having defensive breakdowns all over the court, but I also felt like the offense didn't do them any favors with some of the shot selection. I'm not saying everybody. Some of it is just this team is missing a ton of shots right now, but some of it is they are not playing the same style they were maybe, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and I think that same style is, I've used this word so many times that I actually looked up a different word to use, but I think it's just perfect. Disciplined basketball. And when they're playing well, you can tell how disciplined they are. And that's on the defensive end with the verticality, all the way on the offensive end, running through the shot clock, making sure you're running without the basketball, running in the right places, just playing smart basketball. And they haven't been playing that style of basketball, even in these last 2 games. And that's what's been the most disappointing thing is you got back-to-back games where I felt like, ooh, this one they're not even going to come back from. They're not even finding a groove in their game. And we talked about the missed shots in the post game. And yeah, I understand this King squad early on making all their shots. And it's like, ooh, this team's real if they're making all their shots. And you're not going to always make your shots in the NBA. And what I liked is that they started creating a different type of identity. They started to show that they could do more moving without the basketball, backdoor cuts, just playing smart offensive basketball. And they're not doing that right now, Deuce.
It is tough to get into any rhythm when, your guy that you need out there, Sabonis, who's been playing at such a high level, he's playing at an all NBA level this year, has to come out pretty fast. And then it's like, hey, Neemias Queta, you really haven't played this year. You've been in the G League. Go out there and try to deal with Embiid. It's a tough ask, and I could see how it got them out of a rhythm for sure. But, it was still early, and I just felt like it was just an all-out blitz. Harris got going, Embiid did his thing, Harden got going in the second quarter. And I was a little more optimistic once I heard Fox was coming back in this game tonight because he had been out since that Milwaukee game last Wednesday. And I don't know, I thought maybe they would just sit him out, but apparently he was feeling good enough to go. He looked like he was completely out of rhythm. Like everything was short. I know he had a couple threes that bounced out, but he could not get it going. And when he's not going, he was 5 of 15. He was 1 of 7 from 3. This stat blew my mind. The Kings hit 2 threes in their first 5 possessions. And then G-Man said a stat tonight after that. This was like late third quarter that they had made 2 in their next 60 possessions. So, yeah,
my God.
They end up hitting 10, but they were 10 of 42 from 3 tonight. What do you think? I know I'm going all over the place, but anything jump out to you about Fox and his return?
Yeah. And I'm going to talk about Fox, but I just want to say, even with those threes, Deuce, a lot of those threes open looks too. Mike Brown talked a little bit about it after the game, but for De'Aaron Fox, it's disappointing when you see him still not have that same pop that he had to start this season. And it does make me think, like, look, if it's a foot, that shit's gonna linger. That's a big part of your game. That doesn't just go away with 3 days rest. Like, I understand.
Well, it's more than 3 days. I mean, it was last Wednesday against Milwaukee. It was, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I mean, nearly 6 days of rest.
Okay, 6 days of rest. So even then, not even a full week's of rest. But yes, you're absolutely right. More than 3 days. But looking at that for him, you're seeing that he needs to physically be closer to 100% if he's going to be the good De'Aaron Fox that we've seen. Like he's not his game. It's not like he relies on his outside shooting, so he doesn't need to be explosive and go to the basket. Because if he's not explosive and having all the defense collapse on him, then everyone else doesn't become this threat. Then he doesn't become this threat that he was to start this season. And then even his off-ball movement isn't exactly the same. There's still a lot of good things he's doing out there. And I admire that he wants to push through things. Like I completely understand that. But I think there just comes a time where it's like, yo, now is not the time if you're going to still look like this.
I was surprised at the timing of him coming back. And again, I don't know. Obviously, he felt good enough to play tonight. All right. And they cleared him, right? He had been questionable. I just thought, you are playing a back-to-back. Would have made more sense just to bring him back against Toronto and just kind of see what you could do against Philly tonight and then have him fresh an additional day against Toronto. Hell, I mean, I was even opposed to leaving him off this road trip completely and just getting him ready for that Monday game back home against Charlotte. But it is what it is, and you just hope it's something that, hey, tonight was more about the fact that it just wasn't dropping for him because he had been off a week and, he just needs to get back in rhythm. But he wasn't good tonight, and so that hurts you. I mean, the reality, I felt like this game felt very similar to Kings games we've seen in previous years. I mean, they gave up 80 points at the half. It was 80-55 at the half.
Well, look at the transition numbers too, the fast break points for the Sixers, 23 fast break points for them. And I think when I looked at them, it was such a big difference between the two teams, especially in that first half. But that's where they kept starting to dig and dig and dig the hole. And you saw the way that the Kings weren't getting back in transition. All their shots, the rebounds were flying off the rim, right? They're long shots, so they're long rebounds. And instead of getting those second chance opportunities, the Sixers were doing a good job of just pushing that shit out, getting what they want. I think Will Z also had a stat about deflections. I know the Kings only had 2 deflections tonight, and I believe he said the Sixers had 16 deflections. And you just look at the activity on the defensive end as well, just a different story from both these squads. And that's what crushes me, because that is so much of an effort thing. Like, I get if you're not going to completely stop Joel Embiid, but when you have Shake just taking it to the rack on you, line drive or going baseline or whatever it is, that's when you're letting these other guys beat you. Tobias Harris, James Harden, obviously he's one of the best shot creators ever in the NBA, but still, it was frustrating to see everyone else dominate.
Can I give you the most depressing stat of the night? Actually, I want you to guess. I want to guess. I want the chat to guess too. What do you think is the most depressing stat from this game tonight?
Let the chat guess a little bit.
I want you to guess too, Morgan.
Oh, okay. Well,
it could be Kings related. It could be Sixers related.
Ooh.
I don't think anybody's going to get this.
Okay. Is it something about the Sixers guys and the amount of games that they've played together?
No. But
okay.
Do you have that?
Well, I saw StatMuse put that out.
Well, here's the one thing about the Sixers real fast, and we'll go back to the Kings.
Okay.
They're 15-12 now, and I know you go 15-12. They got to be better than that. Yeah, but that's with Harden missing 14 games. That's with Maxey missing 11. This is a tough matchup for sure.
Do you want to hear it?
Yes.
So Sixers this season, they're 5th in the Eastern Conference, 5th in defensive rating, 7th in net rating. Embiid leading the league in points per game. Harden, Embiid, Maxey have only played 6 games together.
Exactly. And they didn't look perfect at times when those guys were playing. I felt like they needed to get Maxey more involved. He's very important to what they do. But, Harden was really good in this game. He had 21 points, 15 assists. He had 7 rebounds. Embiid had 31 and 7 in just 30 minutes on 10 of 16. He was 11 of 13 from the free throw line. I'm getting a lot of good guesses. People talking about Herter, 7 points, 80 at the half, fast break points, 3-point shooting. I'm looking. Ooh. Go ahead.
The foul shots. Someone brought that up.
No.
Okay.
The most depressing stat is the fact that Matisse Thybulle scored 15 points on 5 of 7 shooting. Perspective. Matisse Thybulle, 15 points. The last 6 games before tonight, he combined for 16 points. Does that hurt? Does that hurt you? Does that hurt you? That's depressing. Yeah. Yeah.
That's so annoying. It's so annoying because that's what I didn't want to see tonight, Deuce. It was just other guys beating you, and Joel Embiid still dominated, and it allowed other guys to kind of get what they wanted to. I think Harden did a great job of collapsing the defense, taking it in. And then he dished out. How many assists did he end with? He ended with 15 assists.
Yeah.
15 assists.
I said that.
Yeah.
Hell, Tobias Harris had 21, 9 assists, and 7 rebounds, Morgan. They knocked down 16 of 35 from 3. So, yeah, the defense wasn't good. I also think it's a tough matchup, too. Here's my problem with how the Sixers play. Embiid gets every call. It's just every single call. And some of them, I'm just like, how you're going to give Sabonis his 3rd foul when he clearly did not foul him, right? Like, his chest was, what did he do wrong on that play? Like, you got to let some guys bang a little bit. They're going to get physical. This is Embiid, but just because he goes falling down doesn't mean you blow the whistle. And that did impact the game early. It did. And the Kings still had time to figure it out, and I'm not blaming it on that, but those things early were just so frustrating.
Mike Brown talked about that after the game, how those early fouls really screwed up the flow of the game. He was like, I'm not trying to blame, obviously there's going to be bad calls, all these things, but it definitely affected the flow, the rhythm of the game early on. You saw that with Keegan, you saw that with Sabonis, and you're right. Like the amount of times that we see these bigs get the shit beat out of them, and then you're going to call some physical play on a big on big. It was just, it super frustrating.
Looking at the last 4 games, we are 4 games into the road trip, a 6-game road trip. It's a long road trip. They play Toronto tomorrow. They wrap up Friday when they take on the Pistons. So this 4-game sample size, the Kings are 1-3, right? Milwaukee, they were competitive. Milwaukee ran away with it at the end. The Cavs game, it was a grind. Then the Kings shut them out on a 19-0 run. Then you had the Knicks game where it was not good, right? You had a lot of missed shots. I still felt like the starters did a good job getting good looks, but they missed shots. And then you had tonight, which I am having a tough time finding anything good from tonight. I might present one thing in a bit. But this last 4 games, the Kings are 48 for 152 from 3. And I know you're going, Deuce, can you do the math for me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 31.6% from 3 over the last 4 games.
That's awful for especially what they were doing and what they're trying to accomplish. And especially on nights where it's like, okay, nothing else is going for you. Oh, and you're shooting, nothing's falling. Yeah. I don't know. It was it's like you said, there was nothing really good about tonight.
Just to be clear, I was not done with the last 4 game stats.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know you're like, please be done. I mean, 31% from 3. That's bad.
There's more?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, they're 105 points a game. That's 29th in the NBA during this stretch. Their assists, 20 per game, which is last in the NBA during that stretch. Of course, you're missing shots, not as many as assists. Might be a little overrated there. During this 4-game stretch, they were 29th out of 30 in offensive rating. But they're 16th in defensive rating in the last 4 games. So, yeah, I mean, it's not good. This last 4 games have been a bit of a grind. We knew it was going to be challenging. The Bucks are really good. The Bucks did bounce back tonight, beating the Warriors in a game. The Cavs, they're kind of in a mini funk. They just lost to the Spurs last night, which is kind of weird. The Knicks had been playing better, right? They've won 4 in a row now. They seem like they're putting it together. And then the Sixers is a good team. Embiid is playing some high-level basketball right now. Like, even some of the double teams they were throwing his way, I just felt like early it didn't really matter. He is moving so well. He looks more fluid than ever. It looks disgusting out there. So we knew this was going to be a challenging trip. You've got 2 games left to get a couple.
I think in two things to this, because you're absolutely right. I think sometimes right now our expectations of the Kings have changed. And so when we do talk about them, even losing to Philly, it's more the way that they did lose. Because I saw some people on our chat talk, Philly is a better team, even without Maxey. They're absolutely like they have some great pieces, obviously in Harden and Embiid alone. But yes, completely understood. It's more of the way that the Kings lost. We knew Milwaukee was a better team, but they lost in a different style, in a different fashion. So yeah, it's just one of those things where I completely understand it, but you just want to see a different game from them. And let's talk about the way that they played defense on Joel Embiid. You and I talked about this off camera, and we were talking about how the Boston Celtics did a good job of stopping Joel Embiid. Whenever he'd put the ball on the floor, they would send the double over, distract, they would take away his vision, make his life so much harder. But everyone on the floor is moving on a string at that point, where tonight you saw if it was Davion going and throwing the double at Embiid, it was waiting until that second dribble. You have to go on the first dribble. And then even from there, who's coming over middle? Everyone was 2 steps behind, 2 steps slow. And they're not ready for it, but I'm glad that they're understanding what they're going to have to do to beat the good teams in the NBA.
Yeah, and the Sixers have a nice recipe when you've got a guy as dominant as Embiid and you're 4th in the NBA in 3-point percentage. I mean, they've kind of got some things figured out. I mean, we can have a different conversation about whether or not we think they're a championship caliber team. That's up for discussion for sure. But they are a really talented team that is putting it together, and Embiid's obviously a big part of it.